Dit is Gezond Radio.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Desiree Rover with a new program of Gezond and Well, Healthy and Well in the Netherlands. And today I have a very special guest with me, Ty Bollinger. Welcome, Ty.
Thanks, Desiree, for having me on your program today. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, you have quite a lot of websites and quite a lot of books that you did. Well, for the Dutch and world audience, can you introduce yourself? That you do that better than I can.
Sure. Yeah. Again, my name's Ty Bollinger, and I live in the United States. And I guess about 6 years ago it was, I published my first book. The name of the book was Cancer: Step Outside the Box. Website for that book is www.cancertruth.net. And that book was really a result of my research over the previous 10 years into cancer treatments, natural cancer treatments. And what really got me headed in that direction was in 1996 when my father, Graham Bollinger, was diagnosed with cancer. And he was diagnosed with cancer on July the 1st, 1996, and he died July the 25th. So he lasted 25 days after the United States medical system got a hold of him, and basically they killed him with the surgery that was supposed to help him with the cancer, and he ended up dying from the surgery.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, so that was really my first experience with a close family member dying from cancer. And then over the course of the next several years after my dad died, I lost both of my granddads, grandmother, uncle, cousin, and then finally I lost my mother to cancer. And it was at that point that I realized that all of the research that I'd been doing over the years concerning natural cancer treatments, alternative cancer treatments, however you want to put it, and the information that I had gleaned about the current medical system in the United States and the way that patients are really not, the goal is really not to cure patients, it's to perpetuate the sickness and to get a lot of money out of them before they're dead. And as morbid as that sounds, I have the research to back that up. So
I agree totally with you. The most profitable months for Big Pharma are the last 3 months in a cancer patient's life.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, Desiree, there was about a year ago I was contacted by a radiologist. He had run a couple of different radiology centers here in the United States, and he said that what got him to where he actually had to leave the business was a quote by an oncologist, and he said they got in a late stage cancer patient, and he said that the patient looked like he was about to die. He was so just shrunken up and dying from cachexia, dying from the cancer, and just looked really bad and looked like he wouldn't last the week. And after the meeting, the oncologist said, we've got to get him on radiation immediately. And the radiologist that was the head of the clinic, he told the oncologist, he said, I don't think that's a good idea because he looks like he's going to die any day now, and I think that the radiation would do worse, do more harm than good. And the oncologist told him, and this is a quote, he said, if we don't get at least 3 treatments in before he dies, we're not going to get paid. And so it was at that point that he realized he was in the wrong business.
Yeah, well, I picked up a nice tidbit of news the other day that, at least in Holland, oncologists get a kickback from the chemotherapy that they prescribe to cancer patients.
Yes, and that's the same here, Desiree, in the United States. The oncologists do here too. They're able to buy the chemotherapy drugs at wholesale, and then they mark them up 3, 4, 5, 6,000% and sell them to the cancer patients.
Oh, that's how they do it. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
they can get them wholesale. So I was doing an interview last year. It was actually on Coast to Coast AM I did last year, and I was talking with George Norrie about the cost of chemotherapy drugs. And as you know, they've got a real big worldwide audience. And afterwards, I got an email from a fellow here in the United States, and we had talked about some chemotherapy drugs are $50,000 per injection. And he said, actually, that was a bit low. He said that this happened last November, so it was about a year ago. His mother had gone in for treatment. She was seemingly healthy, didn't really feel bad or anything. She just went in for a normal checkup, and they diagnosed cancer and said that you got to get her on chemo immediately or she's going to die, which is, it's a typical fear campaign that they scare you into the treatments. Even though you may not even feel bad, they say, you'll be dead within a month or two if you don't start these treatments. So his mother went in for the treatment, and the first shot for chemotherapy was $70,000 US. 70,000. And he said that unfortunately his mother was dead within 14 days. She died from the chemotherapy, and the death certificate actually said that the cause of death was toxicity due to chemotherapy. So the chemotherapy killed her within 2 weeks.
I'm not surprised. Well,
very sad.
Yeah, I lost a son to chemotherapy as well. He was 2 years old when he didn't want to eat anymore and could not walk anymore. And it turned out to be a tumor that was at his lower back near his sacrum, where they call the cauda equina, where all the nerve tissue to your legs is.
Right.
And from there it grew into his belly. So he had 2 operations. And after the first operation, the word cancer was used for the first time. And so after these operations, he had radiation therapy and then chemotherapy. And he was supposed to have 20 different treatments with chemotherapy. And after the 17th, he died because chemotherapy is so bloody toxic.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that I know that it was because of the adriamycin. That is a chemotherapeuticum that blows out your heart, basically. Cardiomyopathy.
Yeah.
But the reason that this 2-year-old little boy had cancer was, of course, vaccines.
Yeah.
And since then, that is why I'm doing what I'm doing today. Since then, I've been doing research to find out how all this is structured, and I went into the history of Western medical so-called science.
Yeah.
And it's not science at all, because what I discovered is that the whole rigmarole of healthcare of today is based on the lies by Edward Jenner and the lies of Mr. Pasteur.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And you know what, Desiree, I'm sorry to hear about your loss. I had no idea that you had lost a 2-year-old son. So I'm sorry for your loss. And I better understand why you're involved with this, kind of sort of the same way that I am. We've lost someone dear to our hearts, and we wanted to find out the truth.
Yeah. And another thing is that I stayed with him in the hospital 24/7 for months on end. So I got a very good look into the kitchen of Western medical so-called science.
Yeah, yeah.
And just common sense and a logical mind, that was all that I had. Looking at what they did and listening to what they said made me sometimes wonder who was the idiot here.
Yeah. Well, we're today, especially in the United States, I think we're not expected to think logically or rationally. We're expected to just believe what we are told on television. We're supposed to believe the propaganda without questioning, even if it doesn't make any logical sense. And so those of us that actually do question the medical protocols or do question anything else about what the government's activities are labeled to be conspiracy theorists or nutty, or they call you names. If they can't defeat you with an argument, they'll call you names.
Yeah, they go for the messenger. But I always say, yeah, you can do that. I don't mind, because I know where I'm coming from. It doesn't hurt me at all. But the message doesn't go away with your tactics.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. And they have to resort to to nasty tactics like calling names and defaming someone's character, because they don't really have the research, especially in the cancer field. They don't have any research to support the use of chemotherapy or radiation. All of the studies show that it actually is toxic and it causes more cancers. So anybody that questions that, they can't really argue with studies, so then they attack your character.
Yes, absolutely. And both chemotherapy and radiation is closely connected to the history of the Sloan-Kettering.
It is.
Yeah, both started in hospitals from which the Sloan-Kettering eventually arose, and both had only to do with money.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, and they both have a connection to the Rockefeller family as well.
Absolutely.
As a matter of fact, in the early 1940s, there was a man that was named Frank Howard, and he was actually a key figure in John Rockefeller's Standard Oil, which Standard Oil, going backwards a little bit, had owned a controlling interest in IG Farben in Germany, which was the parent company of IG Auschwitz, which is the company that manufactured the Zyklon B gas that was used to kill the people, the Jews and others in concentration camps in Germany.
I think that was primarily used to delouse the clothing, by the way, but that is another venue that let's not go into that.
Oh no, you're right. Yeah, I got the wrong. It's the Zyklon B was the delousing, but they also manufactured the nerve gases that were used to kill.
That were used
as well.
on soldiers and stuff. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, so Frank Howard, he was also chairman of the research committee at Sloan-Kettering Institute, and his right-hand man was named Dusty Rhodes, and he was the one that was the head of the experimentation in the development of chemotherapy. You're right.
Yeah, it was James Ewing. He was the private physician of a guy who had uranium and copper mines. And this guy, Mr. Douglas, I think he was called.
Douglas.
Yeah. And this Douglas guy was going to fund the hospital that eventually turned into be Sloan-Kettering, only if they promised to turn it into a cancer hospital, and every treatment was to be with radium from his mines.
I'm not familiar with that.
Everybody had to pay for that. It was not free, the radium. But this guy Douglas eventually killed himself because he took radium even for a sniffle. So he didn't have the idea how dangerous it was. So his wife and daughter, everybody died. And James Ewing found out that the nerve gas that had been used in World War I by IG Farben manufactured, if you put that on lymphatic cells, then they would die. So that is the origin of our chemotherapy. Chemotherapy. And the same, James Ewing was the private physician of this Douglas guy, and he also instigated the radiation therapy. So that is both coming out of Sloan-Kettering and the hospitals that were there before that time.
Interesting. Yeah, I was not familiar with Ewing. I was only familiar with the Frank Howard, Dusty Rhodes connection, but I'm sure it goes deeper than that.
Well, the fun is that I didn't know about Frank Howard and Dusty Rhodes, so we did an exchange here.
Yeah. No, you're always learning, aren't you?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, me too. Every day.
There is one important quote by Bertrand Russell that I want to share with you.
Yeah.
In terms of that you said we are not supposed to think for ourselves. Now, doctors, as I saw, living in the hospital 24/7 for months on end, are trained not to think for themselves. And basically what I saw was a mind control program complete with sleep deprivation. So it made them emotionless. It made them god-awful tired.
Right.
They made mistakes, of course, then. And it was basically to study medicine, which is a nice term in itself, of course, is aimed at and mind control programs so you won't deviate from what you have learned, and you never get the time to think about what you have learned.
Right.
This is why. This is Bertrand Russell from his book, The Impact of Science on Society. And it starts with Fichte, and Fichte was a German philosopher, and the whole educational system is based on a Prussian, it is German background from this school where Fichte was coming from. So Fichte determined, let it down, that education should aim at destroying free will, so that after pupils have left school, they shall be incapable throughout the rest of their lives of thinking or acting otherwise than as their schoolmasters would have wished. And then it goes on, even more interesting. Diet, injections, vaccinations in other words, and injunctions will combine from a very early age to produce a sort of character and a sort of beliefs that the authorities consider desirable. And any serious criticism of the powers that be will become psychologically impossible. Interesting, huh?
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, I was familiar with the first quote from Russell, but I was not familiar with that last part of it. Yeah, very interesting. It is I believe, I agree with you about the doctors being mind controlled. I think that the doctors are more brainwashed, mind controlled, however you want to put it, than almost anyone on the planet. They've undergone 10 years of intensive brainwashing and mind control while in medical school. And then they continue to be brainwashed after they get out of medical school, because, after they graduate and they start practice, they're so busy, they're working all the time, so they're always sleep deprived, and they're also, the only place that they get their continuing education is from the medical journals, and the medical journals are nothing but propaganda because they're funded by the pharmaceutical companies. So all they really learn is drugs all the time.
Yeah, a whole phone book of drugs they learn. And the main thing is why it doesn't work. One thing is, of course, that drugs are not substances that are familiar to our body cells.
Right, yeah, I agree. I mean, cancer is not a disease that results from a deficiency in chemotherapy.
No.
So
neither a deficiency of vaccines, right?
Or vaccines or radiation, for that matter. It's not. So it seems absurd to try to cure something with a drug, because that's not the deficiency of that drug is not what caused it. It seems to me to be more logical if we would look for what happened in the body that caused that resulted in that disease. And so if we could correct that internal imbalance, which is typically a compromised immune system in the case of cancer, then we might have a better chance of actually defeating that disease.
Yeah, they never address causes, only change symptoms.
Exactly, and that's what the modern medical system is based around, treating symptoms. And actually, with the drug companies, they've got a really good thing going. And I say that kind of sarcastically. They are producing chemicals in our water, air, and food that cause cancer. Then once the person is diagnosed with cancer, and in the vaccines as well.
Yeah.
Once they're diagnosed with cancer, then they've got a set of drugs that they've developed to treat the cancer. And then those drugs, which in the case of many of the chemotherapy agents, have actually been shown to be class 1 carcinogens, which means that they create more cancer. So, it's a perpetual disease creation industry, and it's all created by the pharmaceutical drugs that are causing the problems, and the adjuvants and the heavy metals and the vaccines and so on. So they've got if you had no moral conscience or moral compass, then they've got a really good thing going. Unfortunately, for those of us that might actually have integrity or morals or a conscience, we couldn't do that. But evidently, the big pharmaceutical companies don't have any problem doing that to us.
Well, I can tell you even worse. I think it's MIT that created a system with electromagnetic frequencies to switch off the moral compass in our brains.
Yeah, I've read a little bit about that.
Yeah.
You get rid of that moral compass and you can get people to do just about anything, can't you?
Well, they have weaponized everything. The air we breathe, the water we drink, the food we eat, the thoughts we get by way of education, television, and Hollywood and things like that, and the news. It's really amazing.
Do you guys have a lot of chemtrails over there in Netherlands?
Yes, I gave a presentation in Denmark about the health effects of chemtrails, and in January there will be a hearing in the EU Commission on chemtrails. Only we are not supposed to call them chemtrails, because then we need to put on our tinfoil hats.
Oh yeah, they're just contrails that are different than anything that's ever been present in the sky before.
Yeah.
Ah, okay. Yeah. There's I don't know if you've probably seen it. I'm sure if you're up on chemtrails, but the documentary, what in the world are they spraying, and why in the world are they spraying?
I'm in that documentary. I know.
You are in it.
Yeah, I have have only one sentence of a longer interview, but it's a good sentence that they put in. I say that everything the powers that be are doing to us does the three things. It makes us stupid, it makes us sick, and it makes us sterile.
I agree. That's all you need to say. That's the truth. That's the summation in one sentence.
The short version.
Yeah, no, I like that. I'm going to write that down. I need to watch it again, because it's been a couple of years since I've seen the documentary. So
there is a second one now.
Why in the world?
Why in the world are they spraying?
I'm actually friends with Edward Griffin.
Oh yeah, okay.
So he's one of the ones that was producing the documentary.
Yeah.
Very good documentary though. Yeah. I try to give that to as many people as I can that they will say something ignorant like, "Oh yeah, I looked into that chemtrails thing 10 years ago and it's just a bunch of baloney."
Yeah. Well,
I feel like going, "Oh really? You did? You looked into it?"
I did. And on my website I have a presentation that I gave in Belgium a couple of years ago. And that's where Mike Murphy also was, so that's why I know him. It's on my website. People can see it. It's in English, so.
Okay. Yeah, I'm on your website. I'm gonna look through some stuff here after the interview.
Video page. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, very interesting. But yeah, I agree with you. The goal is stupid, sick, and sterile. I'm going to remember that. I'll use that again on a future interview, and I'll give you credit.
Okay, good. Well, it is. I see all these things as so-called binary weapons. I mean, the aluminum that we are being fed by way of vaccines and chemtrails, it is a electroactive substance that changes the way that proteins are folding three-dimensionally in our bodies. So if that way of folding is changed, we have different proteins with different functions.
Yeah, so I agree.
I have heard people say that we are being remade into sort of robotic species.
Kind of like the Matrix.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just watching that movie a couple days ago as I was working. I hadn't seen it in a while, and you look back on some of the things that are in that movie, and a lot of the things that seemed so ridiculous 15 years ago, I look at and think they're not quite so ridiculous anymore.
No, that's why on my website I put 4 documents on the page of politics. That are documents that basically are blueprints towards today's situation. And I have to... Yeah, one is the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion.
Oh, yeah.
One is, that I can't see here, but it is on my website. It is the advice of the great satraps in Constantinople. That's from letters in 1492.
Yeah.
Silent Weapons for a Quiet War.
Yeah, I see that now. And then the Jesuit, I agree.
Secret Instructions of the Jesuits and the Jesuit Extreme Oath of Induction. And when you read those documents, you see the Talmud, the Babylonian Talmud.
Yeah, that Jesuit secret oath is pretty chilling, isn't it?
It is, yeah, but it has the same tone of voice as the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion, and
exactly.
those are based on the Babylonian Talmud, which is Elizabeth Dillinger, Dilling, I think. She wrote a book about that to show what the Talmud is saying, and there are the most incredible things in it. But the most important thing to know is that this group has a vow to their god called the Kol Nidre, which means that they vow their allegiance towards their god, and that means that every deal that they made with another human, has no value at all. So that's very interesting too.
Yeah, it is very interesting. It's all hidden right in plain sight, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
But I have here a wonderful old book, in 1949, The Drug Story by Morris Beale. And we were talking about cancer and vaccination. There are some quotes in here that are very interesting. There is a Dr. Harry Bybee from Norfolk, and he says, "My honest opinion is that vaccination is the cause of more disease and suffering than anything I could name. I believe that such diseases as cancer, syphilis, old sores, and many other disease conditions are the direct results of vaccination." And here is Dr. Clark of Indianapolis in the New York Press, 26 January 1909. He says, "Cancer was practically unknown until cowpox vaccination began to be introduced. I have had to do with at least 200 cases of cancer, and I never saw a case of cancer in an unvaccinated person."
Yeah. Yeah, I agree that the vaccinations are a huge cause of the cancer epidemic. I mean, when you inject a child or an adult with aluminum, mercury, formaldehyde, live viruses, and so on, I mean, you can't have anything except a bad result. As I said earlier, the body is not deficient in chemotherapy. That's not the reason that we get cancer. Is not a deficiency of chemotherapy. Neither are we deficient in aluminum or mercury, those heavy metals. We're not deficient in formaldehyde. So why would those things be put in the viruses if not to make us sick?
Yeah. Well, the whole idea of vaccination, that you introduce a pathogen straight into the bloodstream of a person, is crazy, of course, because the natural ways through our mucous membranes in our noses, mouth, ears, eyes, everywhere.
Right.
And there starts also our first line of defense.
Sure.
The IgA.
Sure. Yeah, so when you have, here in America, I know that there's a lot of people that have had children that have died of SIDS, SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. Well, there's no such thing as SIDS. No. They died from the vaccines. If you look at the cases of infants dying from SIDS, they all were vaccinated recently before they died. But if you happen to put two and two together and say that it had to have been vaccine related, then you're labeled to be a quack or a conspiracy kook. Yeah.
Well, what I heard, and I think that is worldwide, because the whole agenda is worldwide, so why not in this respect? But when there has been an abduction on the body of such a baby, then never in that report will ever appear the word vaccination.
Yeah, that's right. They'll scrub it. They won't. They're not even supposed to mention vaccines.
No.
Even though it's clearly the cause in many of these cases of SIDS. We had a friend who used to live in Dallas, Texas, and my wife's best friend at that time had a son that was under, I guess, 2 years old. It had just gotten a round of vaccines, I think at 18 months, the MMR or the DPT vaccine. And within a couple days, the baby died. And for years, and maybe still to this day, her friend blames herself for him dying because she believes that she let him cry himself to death.
Oh, God.
The baby was crying because of the poison from the vaccines.
Absolutely.
And she blames herself. But, babies don't cry themselves to death. you don't die from tears.
No.
There's something else going on, but she blames herself for letting him cry himself to death. In actuality, the vaccine most likely killed him.
I will gladly talk to her and show her the way so she can be at peace with her child and herself.
Yeah, it's very sad, isn't it?
Because this situation might eventually give her cancer.
Oh yeah. The unresolved stress in your life, those kind of factors, I believe, do a lot of damage to DNA and could trigger cancers as well. I'm with you on that.
Yeah, it's even. I have some pictures of live blood analysis where somebody is doing emotional freedom therapy, which is a way of tapping away from your cells the emotion that hangs on to an old memory, which is somewhere in your cells. And these pictures show that when this person was very sad, her cells even looked very sad. And when she turned that around by doing EFT, her cells changed. And it was even so that an old slide that was still on the microscope, when she did the EFT towards happiness, these old cells changed as well. And the same goes for DNA. Greg Braden speaks about a experiment with DNA. They put that in front of a machine that can measure things very minutely. And they put the person whose DNA it is, they put the person in a different room, 3 rooms down the hall or something, or 3,000 miles, doesn't matter. And they let him or her watch a video that from time to time gives a lot, generates a lot of emotion in that person. And the moment the person feels those emotions, the DNA will react.
Yeah.
Whether it's 3 rooms away or 3,000 miles away, doesn't matter. The military have done many experiments with that. So, in that sense, if you turn that around, we humans have possibilities for healing at our disposal that are incredible.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, there's several folks up here in the States that I'm familiar with, that I'm friends with, that have different techniques for EFT, and also different machines that work as far as emotions and freeing yourself from cancer and the cancerous thoughts that might cause cancer. So I didn't do a lot of reading and studying on that years ago, but I've been doing it lately, and I think there's definitely a link there with in ways that we can help ourselves heal from cancer and even prevent cancers in that manner.
Yeah, well, and I always say start with simple things. I have a couple of personal stories. I had an eye infection. Someday I woke up and I was supposed to go into the studio to record some of my songs. And I woke up and I had an eye infection, and it was really bothering me. All my attention was drawn to that eye, and I thought, oh gosh, that's no good when I have to sing in the studio. That's awful. So what I did, I sat down and talked to my eye, and I said something like, listen, I understand that there is something in my life that I really need to take a good look at. I promise you I will do that tomorrow. Please go away now, because then I can do my recording, and tomorrow I will work at whatever it is you're trying to tell me.
Yeah.
By the time I reached the studio, the eye infection was gone.
Wow. Wow.
That's amazing.
That's great. Yeah.
And
it reminds me. Each week, I do a radio show. I host a radio show here in the States with Robert Scott Bell, and at the end of every show, we end it with "The power to heal is yours," and it sounds like you just exemplified that.
Yeah. Well, there was another time I had taken too much vitamin C, so I had the famous C flush, and I tried to run. Oh, I lost that thing. But anyway. Because I was running, I hit my toe very, very, very hard to the stone step next towards my bathroom. And I heard crunch.
Ooh.
And it was an immense pain. I nearly fainted. And as I was sitting on the toilet, I was thinking, like, oh gosh, there was something that I could do now to turn this around. What the heck was it? I can't remember. It's so painful. What was it? And then I thought, well, let's forget it to find what it is. Let's start simple. And let's talk to my toe. I know you can go back to the original situation, so please do. I will think of other things to do to help you do that, but start, please, now. And it was a summer's day, and I just had a lot of conversations with a scientist who is working with biophotons.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, you know what? I'm going to be in my bed. And I have a window that I can open at the foot end of my bed. I put my foot into the sun, and I let biophotons do the work.
Mm.
And it was amazing, because 2 hours later I could even stand on that foot, and a couple of hours later I could do shoes even.
Wow. Great story.
It was gone. And of course,
Yeah.
I don't know whether it was broken or not. I don't know, but I really heard a breaking noise.
Right.
And the pain was not fun. So, yeah, we can do so much more. And we have been derailed from who we really are. Spiritual beings with a physical experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I excuse me. I agree. The power of the mind actually is amazing, and so I think a lot of the mental aspect of treating cancer or other diseases is, it's not even addressed in the United States, much less in other countries. So the doctors don't even touch on that. It's just about, you're sick. Let's, and as a matter of fact, the diagnosis of cancer or other diseases, specifically cancer, there was a study that I saw, a survey, and I think the diagnosis of cancer is the third most feared occurrence in the United States. Behind a death, of course, is always number one. And then an IRS audit was number 2, and then number 3 was the diagnosis of cancer. So just the sheer fear that is created and the hopelessness that accompanies that in modern cancer treatments, because nobody thinks they're going to get cured with these treatments. I mean, everybody thinks that once they're diagnosed, it's going to be a death sentence.
Yeah, well, I remember very well when my son was operated upon the first time, and the first time the word cancer was used by the surgeon. I said, okay, probably a lot of nerve tissue is ruined, so he might not be able to walk, but I'm very good at painting flowers on a wheelchair.
Right.
And then he said to me, Madam, I don't think you heard that you tell you that your son has a serious life-threatening disease.
Right.
I said, I heard you perfectly, but he's alive now, so that's what I'm concentrating about.
Right. And unfortunately, that attitude is not very pervasive. And so most, if more people had that attitude when they went into cancer treatment, I think a lot more people would survive. But the attitude that's pervasive here is wow, it's a death sentence. Okay, the C word, get your affairs in order. You're dead soon.
Well, there is the famous story of the two Mr. Johnson in the same hospital, one with arthritis and the other with cancer, and they're somehow exchanged their files or whatever. So the guy with cancer thinks he has arthritis, and the guy with arthritis thinks he has cancer. And so the so-called cancer patient dies within 3 months, and the real cancer patient, thinking he has only arthritis, is still alive.
Wow. Wow, I haven't heard that story. That's a great story. It shows the power of the mind, doesn't it?
Exactly. That is exactly what it does.
Yeah.
And often I see doctors doing plainly something that I cannot call anything else but voodoo, medical voodoo.
Right.
You have only 3 more months to live. Well, patients tend to oblige.
Yeah, they do. They do, and that's why, one of the things that I always recommend is to cancer patients is if you've got a doctor that has that kind of an attitude, then fire that doctor and find another doctor that will work with you, that will give you hope, because cancer doesn't need to be a death sentence, and a lot of times the reason that it is because the doctors convince you that you're going to die from it.
Yeah, because that is what he thinks, but he is only one guy repeating what his schoolmasters wish him to repeat.
Yeah. Back to the quote from Bertrand Russell again. Yeah. I agree. And the reason that they believe that is that's what they've been taught. The therapeutics that conventional cancer doctors use, chemotherapy, radiation, and surgery, they don't work. And so the reason the doctor believes that is because that's the truth in his mind, because his treatments don't work. Those treatments do not work to effectively treat cancer. So that's what he believes.
Yeah, well, a quote to that effect is in that drug story book by Morris Beale, by a doctor in the beginning of the 1900s. Yeah, these things don't work. So, and it's basically a religion.
Yeah, it is.
The way it's they deal with it. Yeah, it's amazing.
And one of the reasons too that you have doctors that don't ever think outside the box concerning cancer or even vaccines or whatever is because of the medical mafia, was what I call them. There's a quote from a doctor 100 years ago. His name was Hodge in New York City, and I love this quote. And the quote is: "The medical monopoly, or medical trust, euphemistically called the AMA, is not merely the meanest monopoly ever organized, but it's also the most arrogant, most dangerous, and despotic organization that has ever managed to free people in this or any other age. Any and all methods of healing the sick by means of safe, simple, and natural remedies are sure to be assailed and denounced by the arrogant leaders of the AMA doctors' trust as fakes, frauds, and humbugs. Every practitioner of the healing art who does not ally himself with medical trust is denounced as a dangerous quack, an imposter by the predatory trust doctors. Every sanitarium who attempts to restore the sick to a state of health by natural means without resorting to the knife or poisonous drugs, disease-imparting serums, deadly toxins, or vaccines is at once pounced upon by these medical tyrants and fanatics, bitterly denounced, vilified, and persecuted to the fullest extent." That's what happens to doctors that try to go outside the box.
Yep, I know. I talk to doctors like that. I'm active in the Lyme arena as well. And Lyme disease is a result of biowar activities. And Yale University has a thick finger in all that, because they patented everything that was in sight that had anything to do with Lyme's disease. So tests and whatever. You can't think of it if they have a patent on it. And there are doctors that have had their licenses taken away, and there are doctors that try to work under the radar with their license.
Yeah.
But sometimes they discover things that patients really need to know. So I tell them, you know what? You tell it to me, and I tell it to the public, because I am a nobody, as one of the professors here in Holland said about me when I published my book on the HPV vaccines. She is a nothing. If she were a doctor, I could take her license away. I could take care of her, but she's nothing, so I can't do anything to her. Good,
right.
Good. I'm nothing. I'm a very big nothing, because
you and me both.
I bother them no end.
Yeah, yes. Well, that's what we should do. You got to tell the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. So
I agree with you on Lyme disease as well. As a matter of fact, 5 or 6 years ago, the U.S. government even admitted that Lyme disease was a bioweapon. So that's not even that's not even speculation. They've openly admitted that.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it was, Plum Island has a lot to do with it, and I agree.
Yeah, and the Nazi virologist that started Plum Island, according to the example of Reims, the Reims laboratories in the Baltic Sea. So it's very interesting. And that is basically what these guys can do. They can only repeat certain scenarios and strategies, and they repeat them ad nauseam, endlessly.
Yeah. And that's what they're doing here in the U.S. now. I mean, if I'm sure you're familiar with Operation Paperclip, where basically we brought over all the medical experimenters and the war criminals from Nazi Germany and brought them over here to run the companies.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then NASA and the whole. Yeah, they had important positions on all the universities eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is amazing. It is totally amazing. And for that is the problem for the normal people like you and me, because we have a heart and a conscience. We cannot fathom the depth of the evil that these people will perpetrate.
Yeah, you're right. It's not even fathomable to us. I mean, some of the, just looking at what they do to children, it seems like you'd have to be a monster to do these things. So somebody that actually has a moral compass or a conscience can't even. One of the reasons people can't believe it is because it seems so evil. They can't believe that anyone could be that evil.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's amazing. You really have to learn to think like the devil to catch what they are doing.
Yeah, you do.
But
which is sad.
I'm always saying, when I do a presentation, I always say it's not about the details that I'm telling you. It is about that you start recognizing the patterns here. And one of the patterns is the Hegelian dialectic problem, reaction, solution.
Solution, yeah. You're right. That's exactly what's going on here in the United States. That is exactly what happened with 9/11.
Yep.
And that's what's continuing to go on here in many different scenarios with the Hegelian dialect. They create the problem, and then the people react to it, and then they've got a solution waiting in the wings for it.
Yeah, they have to do that for the public to ask for the stupidities that they offer.
Yeah, exactly. They'll come running for them. They'll come asking for them. Please, please, protect us. Take away all of our freedoms and liberties to keep us safe from these scary, scary terrorists that live in caves out in Afghanistan.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Well, we at the moment we have in Holland there is a murder case that they thought they had solved, sort of, swept under the carpet, more likely. But since my colleagues at argusoak.org are doing theme radio shows on this subject, because this murder is connected to satanic child abuse and things like that, pedophile rings and stuff, and it's pervasive. But when they came up with how you say that, someone who did it, a perpetrator,
yeah,
and this is impossible. I mean, this guy could never have done it, but they used the magic wand of DNA, and they feed the Dutch public on television lies so stupid that I cannot think, how can anybody go for that?
Right.
But apparently people go for it, and then I tell them, and I ask some questions, and then they start to doubt, and I say, yeah, right. Can it be that the powers that be in Holland try to sweep the stuff under the rug?
Yeah, they do everywhere, don't they?
With vaccine damage, and like they do with anything that they cause.
Well, they give you an impossible scenario, then they tell you that it's what happened, and people are so brain numbed, brain dead, propagandized, whatever you want to call it, that they just believe it because it's on the news. It reminds me of that the movie V for Vendetta.
Oh yeah.
You know, that was the perfect scenario. That's exactly what's happening today. If it's on TV, it must be true.
Well, it's interesting that Hollywood has a function in this Hegelian dialectic, because these movies that come out of Hollywood basically show us what they are planning to do to us.
Yeah, they do. I agree.
But then they can always say, oh, it's only a movie.
Only a movie. But then they show you exactly what's happening. Yeah,
but we need to pay close attention, because then we know what they are planning to do.
Yeah, hidden in plain sight.
Yes, absolutely.
Hey, you mentioned Argusoak Radio. I did an interview with, you know, John Consumolder?
Yeah. He's a co-host. Okay. He was a co-host. He has now his own program. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, no, I talked to him several years ago. I just wondered if you knew him.
Yeah, I know him. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, there are things that we had now all the negative sides of cancer and Western medical so-called science, and we let's get that out of the way.
Yeah.
And let's start talking solutions. Because, yes, another thing that is very dangerous right now that I need to address first before we switch and do the solution thing is Codex Alimentarius and the GMOs.
Yeah. Oh, I agree.
And GMOs, people always call them genetically modified organisms, but I am all for calling a spade a spade. So I always call them genetically manipulated organisms.
Yeah.
Because that is what it is. And this technology is so coarse, so not refined, that the results, yes, they are very scary indeed.
Yeah.
And that's what we see.
Yeah, I agree with you, Desiree. As a matter of fact, I believe I just did a radio interview Sunday night, and I was talking just about GMOs, and I believe that may be our biggest threat at this point, especially in the States, because I don't know if you're familiar with Proposition 37 in California,
yes.
but proposition that would make them label GMO foods, and that failed.
That failed because they thought...
I say it failed, but yeah, it was a fraudulent vote count, obviously.
Yeah, they stopped counting. When they thought they had the right decision, and then there were 3 million votes to be counted, but
exactly.
They forgot about it.
It doesn't matter. You can just not count 3 million votes and just declare the winner. Anyway, but I think that's one of the biggest threats that we face, because in the United States, and I'm sure it is there too, GMOs are in everything. They're in all the processed foods contain GMOs. And so this most recent study out of France that was just published a couple months ago, first long-term study, shows that the GMOs cause cancer, cause sterility, cause premature death, and so on. So, all the studies before had been constructed in such a way to make them seem safe, because they always stopped at about a 90-day point. And that was too early for the rats and the hamsters to get the cancerous tumors and to die early. They're not going to die in 90 days. It takes them, 120, 150, 180 days. So
they get sacrificed, it's called.
Yeah.
Such an awful term. Yeah,
it is.
Basically, the same thing happened with the polio vaccines. They killed the hamsters in the 1950s for the Salk and Sabin vaccines out of Merck.
Yeah.
And then there was this researcher who had them live longer, and she found out that then the tumors appeared. And this SV40, the simian virus 40, is found today in the brain tumors of adult Americans, the exact same strain of SV40 as was in the vaccines of the 1950s. So vaccine damage can take 50 years or more to appear.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very interesting. I'm sure you've read the book Dr. Mary's Monkey.
Yep. Yeah.
And so that's detailed in that book. One interesting thing about that is the fact, that they were working on this linear particle beam accelerator down there in New Orleans.
Yeah.
And the Dr. Mary was one of the ones on that team, but the head of the project was actually Dr. Alton Ochsner, who was former head of the American Cancer Society. And he was a major stockholder in Cutter Laboratories, and they were the ones that had were producing the contaminated polio vaccine with SV40. And Ochsner actually, to show that the vaccine was safe, he injected his own granddaughter and grandson with the virus, with the vaccine, and it actually killed his grandson, and it crippled his granddaughter.
Yes, but why didn't he inject himself then?
Yeah, no kidding. Why don't you inject yourself? So anyway, that whole connection with him and Dr. Mary and even Lee Harvey Oswald is very fascinating in that book. And it's interesting that you were talking about the way that they will say something that doesn't make any sense and people just believe it. That's what happened with the JFK assassination here with Lee Harvey Oswald.
Yeah, also, it's all the time.
So you've got people still believe that Oswald killed Kennedy. Well, it's agreed that if he did, he shot him from behind. But every report of eyewitnesses says that, and even the Zapruder film shows that Kennedy's head went backwards. So how do you shoot someone from behind and make their head go backwards?
Well, the same thing with the other Kennedy.
Yeah.
With Sirhan. Yeah.
Sirhan, yeah. He was definitely mind controlled.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's all linked together. None of it makes sense. But if you question, if you actually think logically and you say, and you just watch just one aspect of the JFK assassination, his head goes backwards. He was supposedly shot from behind. Therefore, that can't be. He had to have been shot from the front. That's just logic. But if you say that, then you're deemed to be a conspiracy theorist. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, but the word conspiracy theorist is one of the New World Order vomit words, as somebody calls them, because it puts people immediately on hold.
It puts them on the defense.
Puff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In actuality, the definition of a conspiracy is just when two or more people are gathered in secret to accomplish a hidden goal.
Yes.
Well, the conspiracies happen all the time. I'm not a big football fan, but every Sunday here in the United States, we've got a dozen football games from the NFL that are on. Well, the people don't realize this, but every time they get in that huddle, the offense is forming a conspiracy. They're conspiring to score a touchdown against the defense. It's two or more people in secret with a hidden goal, okay, or with a hidden plan. Yeah. Well, that's what's going on every Sunday, a million times. They're conspiring. So conspiracies happen all the time.
Yeah, but basically what you describe is to diffuse the word conspiracy for people, so that they think, it's a normal thing, it's not good, so puff, because it's a mind warp.
It is.
They create a mind warp. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And you've often heard the term whoever defines the terms wins the argument.
Yeah.
So they define terms. They define the term conspiracy to be a real scary thing that only crazy people are involved with. And so anytime that anybody, especially in the United States, dissents with the popular opinion that is propagated onto us by the controlled media, then you're deemed to be conspiracy theorist. Well, that's just a situation where they've controlled that term.
Yeah, well, in Dutch, in English you have, with vaccines, you have the term adverse effects.
Right.
In Dutch we use, and when I translate it, we use the word side effects. But if the side effect of a vaccine is death, it's not a simple side effect. It's an adverse event.
Sure.
But by using that term side effect, they shush people. Hey, you're not as vigilant anymore because of the term. It's not so bad. It's only a side effect.
Right.
Same as I said with modification and manipulation. Yeah. That's why I'm always trying to use the right words. But I see how mainstream uses the words that are meaningless or less meaningful.
Yeah. Yeah, and they also, again, when we're talking about vaccines, it reminds me of something I was just talking about a couple days on the radio show. For instance, with the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, or as I call them, the Center for Disease Creation in the United States. One of the things that they have on their website is about the flu, because there's so much backlash against the flu shot now, because it's obvious that the flu shot doesn't work. The Cochrane collaboration, 2006, studied 51 different. They collaborated on 51 different studies, and they proved without a doubt that the flu shot doesn't work. It's not effective. So there's a lot of backlash against the flu shot now in the United States. People don't want to get the flu shot. So one of the things that the CDC addresses on their frequently asked questions on their website is the number one question: I've heard the flu shot causes the flu. And they say, no, it doesn't cause the flu. But then the next sentence, it says, but the flu shot can cause fever, chills, coughing, nausea. And I'm like, what? That's the flu.
Yeah, right.
What? That's the flu. That's the symptoms of the flu. But they say it doesn't cause the flu, but it does cause fever, chills, coughing, and nausea. Well, we got a bunch of brain dead people here that look at that and say, hey, it doesn't cause the flu. It just causes fever, chills, nausea, and vomiting.
Yeah.
So,
it's too stupid, huh?
Yeah, it is. But that shows you the level of ignorance and just, for lack of a better word, passiveness, I guess, that people have when researching health. The CDC says it doesn't cause the flu, so I guess it doesn't cause the flu, even though it creates all the symptoms of the flu.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when you look at there was a survey that I saw last year. I think it was 70% of doctors and nurses in the United States will not take the flu shot. That should tell you something, shouldn't it?
Yeah.
And when you look at and back to cancer, when you look at the oncologists that are prescribing chemotherapy for their patients, you would think they would take chemo if they were diagnosed. But there was a study that was done in Canada that they surveyed 64 oncologists at the Royal McGill Cancer Clinic in Montreal, and of those 64 oncologists, 58 of them would not do chemo if they were diagnosed with cancer. So that's 91%.
Yeah.
Of oncologists that wouldn't do it themselves.
But the rest was lying.
Yeah. Yeah, the other 9% were lying.
Yeah. I have a joke for you. I got an email this morning by a friend of mine, and better than a flu shot. Miss Beatrice, the church organist, was in her 80s and had never been married. She was admired for her sweetness and kindness to all. One afternoon the pastor came to call on her, and she showed him into her quaint sitting room. She invited him to have a seat while she prepared tea. As he sat facing her old Hammond organ, the young minister noticed a cut glass bowl sitting on top of it. The bowl was filled with water, and in the water floated, of all things, a condom. When she returned with tea and scones, they began to chat. The pastor tried to stifle his curiosity about the bowl of water and its strange floater, but soon it got the better of him, and he could no longer resist. "Miss Beatrice," he said, "I wonder if you would tell me about this," pointing to the bowl. "Oh, yes," she replied. "Isn't it wonderful? I was walking through the park a few months ago, and I found this little package on the ground. The directions said to place it on the organ, keep it wet, and then it would prevent the spread of disease. Do you know, I haven't had the flu all winter."
That's too funny. That's a good joke.
Yeah, we need to laugh sometimes.
Yeah, you do. And that's one of the things that I believe that people need to do is they need to laugh. That's why, each week we try to, on my radio show, we try to laugh. We make fun of things as well as talking about serious issues, because so many times you hear a health show and it's just nothing but mundane, monotone talking, and there's nothing exciting. So yeah, I agree. You got to laugh. You have to laugh about these things.
Yeah.
There's interesting. One of the things that we laughed about last week was are you familiar with the Olsen twins? No. There's two little girls. They're mid-20s now, but they're movie stars in Hollywood. And this just shows the pervasiveness of the big pharma culture here in the United States. There's a handbag that they have for sale. They have a line of clothing now, and there's a handbag that they have for sale for $55,000, and glued on the handbag are pharmaceutical drugs.
Oh, really?
And it's a designer handbag, $55,000 US, and on it are glued designer drugs, pharmaceutical drugs. So it just shows that the pervasiveness of the big pharma culture, that's considered to be cool in the United States, to walk around with a handbag that has drugs glued to it.
Yeah, amazing.
So we just said, hey, maybe when they're out partying and drinking too much alcohol, they can just, instead of having to bring their prescription medicine with them, they can just gnaw on their purse.
Yeah. Oh, crazy. Yeah, but anyway, people like these twins, I suppose, that they fit into the agenda of throwing off our youth from the straight path of sexuality, for instance, because that is also something that I see that we are being attacked on.
Yeah. I agree. Matter of fact, even one of the drugs that was glued to the handbag is a Viagra.
Oh yeah, of course, the blue one.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I see the bag. Oh gee.
You see it now, okay.
Yeah, I see it. Oh, stupid. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. But, it just shows the attitude, especially here in the States, that drugs are good. I mean, you look at some of the commercials on TV here and the list of side effects that they are required, at least that's a good thing for now. They're required to mention the side effects or the adverse effects, whatever you want to call them, of the drugs is sometimes longer than the list, than the description of the drug itself. It'll turn a 30-second commercial into a 1-minute commercial because the side effects are so pervasive. But people will still take the drug.
Yeah, amazing, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And a lot of times the drugs that are being advertised actually cause the disease or the symptom that they're being advertised for. Like recently I saw an advertisement for an arthritis drug. I can't remember the name. But in the list of side effects, it sometimes causes arthritis.
Oh, but it's all the time that it happens.
Yeah,
it's amazing. Yeah.
And you look at Gardasil, the vaccine to take care of cervical cancer. It causes cervical cancer. If you look at the insert, it causes cervical cancer in some cases.
Yeah, and the funny part is that HPV, as I state in my book, has nothing to do with cervical cancer. Yes, maybe HPV is found in tumors in the cervix, but that is because was the cancer caused in the cervix? Because the body lacked certain nutrients, like folic acid, which the contraception pill will deplete from your body, by the way. Mm-hmm. So, and this depletion of folic acid will create lesions in the cervix. Those might turn into cancer if the immune suppression stays on, because that's what it is, of course. And then HPV and also, of course, fungi will go into these places also. That's why they are found there, but they are company of the situation that is not right in the first place.
I agree. Yeah, I've never seen a study that shows a definitive link between HPV and cervical cancer.
No. It's only one German professor in the 80s who decided yes, and he got a Nobel Prize for it. So then you know for sure that something is fishy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Run away if you see somebody got a Nobel Prize or something.
Yeah,
but it's the same way with the link between cholesterol and heart disease. High cholesterol. The people that live the longest and are the healthiest have high cholesterol. Cholesterol has never been established to be a causative factor in heart disease. It's actually the reason that
we need it.
We need it for proper brain function. Our body will shut down without cholesterol. And I think that a lot of these cholesterol-lowering drugs are one of the reasons we have the explosion in Alzheimer's disease, because the brain doesn't work properly without cholesterol. Yeah. But in reality, the problem with hypertension or with heart disease, not just hypertension, but actual cardiovascular disease, is the abundance of sugar in our diets, because the sugar creates the insulin release, which causes lesions in the endothelium. And so those lesions are what cholesterol comes in kind of as the rescue man to plug up the lesions.
Exactly.
And so the cholesterol gets the blame, but it's actually saving you.
Yeah.
The cause is the sugar and the insulin release, but nobody looks at the cause anymore. They blame cholesterol.
Yes. Well, I had in my radio show on September 17 or 26, I don't know. Anyway, in September I had on my show Dr. Hannah Joseph, and she wrote a book, How Statin Drugs Really Lower Cholesterol and Kill You One Cell at the Time.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the book, but I agree with the premise, with the title.
It's a fantastic book because what she has done is she prints all the articles, the medical articles that she uses to state her case. They are printed on the same page, so you can read what she found, all from the medical literature. Oh,
I love that! I love that premise.
Yeah.
Yeah,
perfect.
That's, as a matter of fact, that's kind of the premise that we've used, that I used in the latest book that I published called Work with Your Doctor. We gave all the studies, the medical studies, to show how you can treat different common ailments with natural methods, and we gave the studies so that you can take that to the doctor and show the doctor what these studies are, because a lot of times you've got a doctor that may mean well, but he's completely ignorant of the studies that have been performed on these natural treatments. And so if you can actually go and show him or her the studies, then you got some power behind your argument, because these are peer-reviewed studies on these different substances. So I love that premise. What was the name of the book again? How cholesterol drugs kill you?
How statin drugs really lower cholesterol and kill you one cell at a time. I put it in our chat with the ISBN numbers, and also they had different. They have several books. I'll give you the websites also.
Anna Yosef. Okay, I see that. Yeah.
They have
great.
websites statinjuryvictims.blogspot.com.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Statins ID effects.
Statin side effects.
Yes, too, of course. Statin side effects.webs.com. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Yeah, that looks like a good book. I'm going to have to read that.
Yeah. So I will put this information at our show. Yeah.
Sure. Great.
This is great. Yeah, and she is a nice old elderly lady, and really giving all her time to this. And her husband is the one who has had the problem of the statins. So they wrote also the book Recovery from Statin Side Effects. So exactly how to do that. And
it looks like a very intriguing book.
Yeah, it does. It is. I mean, yeah. Okay, I promised we would go to positive things.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing, when you think about cancer, you think about breast cancer.
Yeah.
And then you think about mammograms. Of course, these are horrible.
Yep.
I mean, they are creating cancer. They have a lot of false positives. It's a whole industry, this, that, and the other. I am involved here in the Netherlands with the introduction of infrared screening.
Okay.
Which is basically, it's a very sensitive infrared camera that shows you the heat,
thermography,
temperature of the body. It's a thermography, yes.
Yeah. That's interesting that you bring that up, Desiree, because of course, all of the studies show that mammograms, the ionizing radiation, causes the cancers and the future cancers in women. Every study that I've read shows that the mammograms increase your risk of cancer. Much better option is the thermography. We were talking about that a couple of days ago on the radio show. Actually, Health Canada has just criminalized thermography. They've made it to where if you offer advanced thermography in Canada, that it's a crime now.
Oh yeah, and, of course. It works.
It works. It works, and it's a threat to the $10 billion mammogram industry each year.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And
I'm glad that you're involved with that, because that's a much better alternative. Advanced thermography is a much better alternative. Detects breast cancer much earlier, and it's less invasive, and it doesn't cause cancer.
It doesn't cause cancer. You can follow the therapy even. They distinctly state themselves, people who are working with infrared photography, they state that it gives you a series of photos upon which you can decide whether it's necessary to do a mammogram. Well, that's of course a political way of addressing things, because a couple of years back in 2007 I was involved also with thermography with a Dr. Eccles in London.
Yeah.
And that was a different system, because that was a camera that took two pictures, one when you came in, and then you got a cold wind on the body, and then a second picture was taken, and then the computer would find the differences between the two pictures. In other words, where there were new veins formed because a tumor was doing that someplace.
Right.
And what he told me is that this form of thermography enabled him to work with these women that had suspicious areas on their photos, if he changed their diet
Yeah.
at that moment, and they came back after half a year or so, then he could see on the next series of photos that whatever was there was not there anymore at all, or had decreased significantly.
Wow. So you mean that diet actually has something to do with our health?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I say that sarcastically, but it's amazing that in the United States, doctors will never discuss diet with your health, and they never link the two. As a matter of fact, there was an article that I just was reading out on Fox News a couple of days ago, and I read Fox News just to get laughs sometimes.
Yeah.
And they were saying that beware for those crazy doctors that might tell you that there's a link between nutrition and cancer. It's like, come on. Oh, really? You mean what you eat actually might determine whether you're healthy or not?
Yeah, well,
I mean, even someone as with a profession like a car mechanic knows that the fuel that you put into your car affects the performance. But when we apply that to the body, somehow that's supposed to be some kind of a quacky idea that nutrition might have something to do with your health.
Yeah, no, it's crazy idea.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever it is you're eating determines what you think, what you feel, what you do, and the result of those.
Yeah.
Of what you create in your environment, in your life.
Yeah, maybe back to mammograms. I think that mammograms are a perfect weapon for those that are generating repeat revenues, because if you're an oncologist, the best way to ensure that you'll have a cancer patient to treat at age 55 is to start exposing them to radiation at age 40, let's say.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's kind of like a diabetes clinic offering free candy to children. At some point, they're going to have diabetes after eating enough processed sugar. Same way with mammograms and cancer.
Yeah. They have it really. They organize it well.
Yeah.
They do things so that you become a lifelong client. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that's the goal. As a matter of fact, I know a physician in Texas that is a cardiac surgeon, and he also works with heart patients. His primary revenue is cholesterol lowering drugs. Okay, and he told me that if he can get 800 of his patients to get on cholesterol lowering drugs, that he can retire, because that's a repeat revenue for life. And so that is the goal, is to have repeat customers. And so I was astounded when he said, yeah, if I can get 800 of my patients to get on cholesterol lowering drugs, I can just retire, because I'll be generating a revenue each month from that.
This sounds to me like network marketing.
Yeah.
Paying for
network
your next
marketing with your health.
paying for your next race car or whatever. Yeah.
Exactly. Unfortunately, it's at the expense of all of the health of the patients.
Yeah, but we patients need to be sensible and use our common sense and logic.
Yeah.
And not being fearful. Because when we are fearful, that's an emotion, and when you are in any emotion, you lose oversight, you lose your ability to think straight, because the biochemistry of your body will send you into fight-flight reaction, which sends all the blood to the parts of the body where you can run or hit or hide, freeze, but not to your frontal cortex, where you have the office manager that can say, hey, wait a minute, let's add things up here first and then act.
Yeah, and in light of what I said earlier about the diagnosis of cancer being the third most fearful event in the United States survey, I'm sure you're familiar with a Swedish study of 60,000 women that showed that 70% of the tumors supposedly detected by mammograms are actually false positives.
Yeah.
So, what happens with this false positive is that those women are then subjected to emotional stress. They are full of fear. They're then led to do biopsies, right? Or chemotherapy, which both of them cause cancer. Chemotherapies cause the cancer, even if it wasn't there to start with. Now it's going to come because of chemotherapy suppressing the immune system. And the biopsies, if there is, we all are generating cancerous cells every day. It's just a normally functioning immune system will fend off those cancer cells, but the biopsies will actually spread it into the blood and make the cancer metastasize.
Yeah. Well, here it says in that same drug story book of Morris Beale, because doctors say such sensible things there, they discovered that cancer is simply an extreme case of toxemia, just as the common cold is the mildest form of toxemia. So what you need to do is you need to detoxify, and you need to create an environment in the body that is uninviting to cancer cells or pathogens or whatever. So that means you need to have the right pH, degree.
Yeah.
And be alkaline. And
sure. Yeah, I talk about that. I talk about the alkalinity in my book on cancer. Cancer Step Outside the Box. I talk about the detoxification. I've got a whole chapter on how to detoxify your body. I talk a lot about alkalinity, being an alkaline environment. I talk a lot about the immune system, because those are the keys. You got to detoxify, you got to have an alkaline environment, and you got to have a fully functioning immune system. And if you have all those three things working for you, you can't get cancer. You can't if you have your immune system functioning and you've detoxified your body and you're in an alkaline environment. Unfortunately, those three things are compromised just about on everyone. We're all full of toxins because of the air, the food, the water. Yeah. We all have a compromised immune system because of the toxicity that we're being pelted with, and most of us have an acidic environment because of a poor diet.
Yes, and as I said, the powers that so bloody want to be have weaponized everything. So everything we do and take and drink and eat and whatever is bad for us. Yeah. So you need to really know how to turn that around. And one of the infrared screening is one of the ways to see the situation of your body, and it was fun that I was a guinea pig for this infrared screening, of course, because I have to write about it, and I really want to know what it is.
Yeah.
And well, it was perfect. My little old body is still in great shape. That was
That's
very
great.
good. But I'm also involved with this scientist who developed a device with biophotons. And it's called a hyperphoton 3D. It's how you can say that? It's a ergonomically designed screen with 128 LED lights in it, 64 infrared and 64 white ones. And this scientist only works according to nature. So the frequencies of the light that you can put through this device, you can change the lights, but the way you can the light is according to nature. So it's not frequencies that are harmful to the body.
Yeah.
And you can do amazing things with it. What is the basic treatment is that you have 8 minutes and then it's put on the back of your head, and 8 minutes with your eyes closed at the front of your head, and then to your chest, and basically along all the endocrine centers, or the chakras, you could say. And then if you have specific areas that need attention, then you can put the light there as well. And he also has, a magnetic thing going with it to reinforce the effect. But I can show you pictures in my presentation that there was an 84-year-old woman. She had cancer. Her toes were totally black and almost falling off. And she was in a room with another person who was going to be treated by this hyperphoton thing. And they thought, oh well, let's give this old lady also a treatment because she's in the same room, and it's a pity not to. And they took pictures of her foot the first day, and after a week, and after 2 weeks, and after 4 weeks, and after 4 weeks, her toes were pink again.
Wow! And
starting to look real healthy. Amazing.
Interesting. Yeah, it is. I actually talk about biophotons in the book in the section on ultraviolet blood irradiation. So, yeah, that's a great therapy actually for cancer as well. The UVBI with the biophoton machines.
Yes, and these photons, they don't cure anything. What they do is they give energy to the cell, the light energy that the cell is operating on, so that the self-healing mechanism of the body can kick into action again.
Right, and that's the common thread among most of the treatments that I talk about in the book is that they don't do anything except restore your body to the normal healthy state to where you can take care of disease on your own. That's the purpose.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's amazing what you can do, and there is also in my presentation I have a picture of a cat lying under the light of this hyperphoton within the magnetic ring. And cats don't do that if it weren't good for them.
Yeah, they know, don't they? Animals typically know.
Yeah.
That's an interesting story that I mentioned in the book is about Harry Hoxsey that developed a herbal formula to treat cancer, and he learned about it from his horses. The horses, when they would get sick with cancer, they would go out and eat on certain herbs and grasses in the field. And so he learned from the horse's knowledge which herbs to brew into a tea, which he used to treat cancer.
Yeah, absolutely. I once worked with a Tibetan doctor. He was originally a neurosurgeon in Belgium, but he got so disgusted by his colleagues who started calling in all their old patients just because they wanted to buy a new Porsche.
Yeah.
So he was disgusted, and he went to Tibetan doctors in China and learned Tibetan medicine. And then he started to work on horses. And he said to me, literally, if you can help a horse to heal, then people are a piece of cake.
That's true. That's
horses,
true.
Yeah, horses are so much more sensitive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. That's absolutely right. As a matter of fact, there's a one of the treatments that I talk about in the book is called Life One, and it's a blend of 8 different medicinal herbs. But I'm aware that they just used it to the first case of a horse being cured of terminal cancer with this Life One treatment was just performed within the last couple months. So it's interesting. Yeah, you can cure a horse. You can definitely cure a human.
Yeah. Well, and there are so many things that are good for us, and at the moment, Codex Alimentarius is going to kick in tomorrow here in Holland and Europe.
Really? Yeah. Really? So what does that look like there? What's that going to do to your supplement?
We are not allowed to put anything on a label of a bottle of vitamin D3, for instance, to say that it is good for your immune system and this and your bones and your this, that, and the other.
Right.
You cannot do any claim whatsoever, and it's even worse than that. I work for a magazine that goes to doctors and therapists in complementary medicine. So I write articles about orthomolecular food supplements and that sort of thing. Even that you can't do anymore. You can't even do an article on these things anymore. So
really,
yeah.
Wow. So what are you going to do? What are you going to write?
Well, I thought of doing it like this, tongue-in-cheek. So I write my article saying that, yes, I have heard there are some people that have a claim on vitamin D3, but I cannot believe that it is true.
Yeah.
It's like that, you know?
Okay, sure.
Stupid.
Yeah.
Stupid article.
That may be a way around it. What will the Codex do to the abilities as far as to purchase D3 in an amount that's therapeutic?
Well, what they did was the amounts are being lowered and lowered and lowered. The how you say that? The daily allowance.
The daily allowances.
Yeah, they are lowered and lowered. A couple of years back, I visited the Director General of the Health Department of the EU in Brussels. And I asked this Director General personally, Robert Medlin, I asked him, can you tell me what is the discipline of the scientists who determine the safety of food supplements, of the nutrients that we have taken in for ages,
Right.
which are the reason that we are here? And what's their discipline? And then he said to me, I don't know. And I thought, what?
Really?
Either you're stupid, or you do know and you don't want to tell me. But
In either case, you shouldn't listen to him.
yeah, in either case, he shouldn't be there. But anyway,
Right.
couple of weeks or months later, I was invited to a political party they had a meeting on Codex,
Yeah.
and they had invited 4 speakers, and 3 only came. 2 pro-Codex people, and only me as a non-pro-Codex person.
Okay. Yeah.
I think it was a biologist, and the other one was a toxicologist. And it turned out that it was the toxicologist that was the person who, in the EU Commission for Nutrients, Codex, daily allowances, was the
Yeah.
person to judge that.
Was that Rolf Grossgloss?
No. That's that was the how you say that, the chairman.
Okay, sure. Okay.
No. You have all sorts of committees within the Codex, and apparently for nutrients,
Yeah.
the Netherlands have the commission. They are the ones that do the work for that commission.
Okay.
So, but this guy was a toxicologist, and in his speech he had said something about, for instance, vitamin C, the safe daily allowance is 75 milligrams, and if you go over that, it starts getting toxic. And then I started howling with laughter. And I said, well, then I should be very much dead, because when I traveled to my friend Dr. Vera Scheibner in Australia,
Yeah.
from Amsterdam, I was underway some 30 hours to do that, and I took 30 grams of vitamin C.
Yeah.
And you know what? I didn't have any jet lag, and I felt fine when I arrived.
Sure. What did he say to that? Anything?
No. But then it was my turn to give my speech on Codex, and from the top of my head, I just told the audience the story of the history of Codex,
Yeah.
which made the speeches of these other 2 guys totally ridiculous.
I bet it did. Most people don't know the history of Codex, how insidious it is, and they don't see the underlying purpose with Codex, do they?
No. And I know personally Scott Tips. He is doing great work. He is the only he's within all the Codex meetings all over the world, and he helps to divert disaster.
Yeah.
When they are trying to put something through which is very stupid in terms of our health.
Right.
But it's an uphill battle. It's very difficult.
It is.
He's doing great work. I deeply respect him. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you're familiar with Dr. Rima Lebo.
Yeah.
With her work against Codex. So I guess she's probably the biggest name here that fights Codex.
Yeah, I don't know what to think of her, because her husband is a military guy who had been involved in shady stuff.
Yeah, he was involved with the remote viewing.
Yeah, shady. And she is a psychiatrist. And then this couple all of a sudden fights for our health. I'm a bit cautious.
Are you? Yeah, I actually met them when I lived in Panama, and got to know them a little bit, and they seem to be legit to me, but I just based on a couple of meetings.
Yeah, but what she basically says is, come to Canada, to Panama, to me. hey, come live here too, as a solution.
Yeah. Well, I think now they're, if I've read it correctly, I think they're moving to Chile now, aren't they?
I don't know, but
yeah,
moving out of the place that you are is not a real solution. I mean, many people cannot do that.
Well, it's a new world order, and so that means it's global. So I don't think you can escape it by going to another country.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can't escape what the new world order is having in store for us. But
exactly.
We need to wake up, all of us. And what I see is that 911 woke up a lot of guys because of the technical idiocies that they saw.
Right.
Discrepancies that they saw. And with other people, it was the 2009 pandemic of the World Health Organization.
Yeah.
With the flu thing, which was a repeat of the 1918 and the 1975 flu action.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting about the flu, the 1918, and this is documented in the Journal of American Homeopathy, that the 1918 flu pandemic killed about 500,000 people in the United States, and there was over 66,000 documented cases of people that were treated homeopathically.
Yes.
With the Spanish flu, and there was a mortality rate of only 0.7%.
Yes.
Whereas those that were I think there was close to 30,000 documented cases of those that were treated in hospitals with conventional treatments, and the death rate was 30%.
Yeah, well, it's not for nothing that they are so scared shitless of homeopathy. It works.
Yeah, it works.
Yeah, and they have been trying to stamp it out since 1910, since Abram Flexner came with his report, so-called looking through the medical schools that were there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and that, actually he was funded by Rockefeller.
Yeah, I know. But and Carnegie Foundation.
And Carnegie too.
Yes. Yep. Basically, they divided the thing. Rockefeller went on in America, and Carnegie went overseas. And in the drug story book, they mention all the universities and amounts of money for which they sold their souls to the devil.
Yeah.
And even 2 Dutch universities are mentioned there, Leiden and Utrecht. So, yeah.
And that's interesting too, that the reason that in the United States why the medical doctors looked upon as being the demigod of knowledge is because of this Flexner report that basically created drug intensive medical schools, and so that's the practice of conventional medicine or allopathic medicine via drugs is deemed to be the best therapeutic, when actually it's not. It just happened to be that over 100 years ago, funded by the Rockefellers and the Carnegies, that the American medicine was bought off.
Yes.
And so that's it's very interesting to me to look at the history of that. Also, it's interesting too the fact that in 1913 the American Cancer Society was actually founded by John D. Rockefeller.
Yeah, he's everywhere. He has his finger in every pie. Everywhere.
Yeah. And it's interesting too that after the Flexner report in 1913, I think it was, under the advice of Rockefeller, the AMA established a propaganda department to attack all unconventional medicine.
Yes.
They have the same protocol everywhere.
Yeah. And Morris Fishburne and the other one, Simpson, before. Fishburne. Yeah. But
Fishburne,
the osteopaths are the only ones who escaped this slaughter by Abram Flexner. And that's why in America you have 20 universities where you can become a doctor of osteopathy, and that is a very good thing.
Yeah.
We don't have that in Europe, I'm sorry to say. But a fact is that the homeopathic doctors first had their medical association, and then came the American Medical Association of the allopaths, and they were organizing themselves just to run homeopathy out of Dodge. And it still hasn't succeeded.
No. No. Because it works.
It does.
People keep going back to therapeutics that actually work, don't they?
Yeah. Well, also the homeopathic medicines, whatever you want to call them, they cannot put anything on their label anymore now. So it's it is becoming more and more difficult for lay people to find what they need in terms of homeopathy, what they can do. It's harder and harder. And another way that homeopaths and naturopathic doctors in Holland are getting into a position that is not very easy is that all of a sudden they now have to pay taxes, 21% of taxes on their what they charge the client.
Oh, really? I didn't. Oh, over there in Holland.
In Holland, and so and also the insurance. We have an insurance like Obamacare. You are obliged to take insurance. If you don't, you get a fine and another fine, and then you have an insurance policy forced upon you. You have to pay it through the tax office, and it's amazing what they do. Yeah, it's real fascism. And you can you have a basic insurance, and then on top of that, you can choose to take out some policies of complementary medicine. But the point is that you first need to pay a lot of money before this insurance kicks in. And in the complementary medicine that you want to do, you have a ceiling, like €400, and then if you do more than €400 for yourself in complementary medicine, then you have to pay for yourself again. So it is really crazy.
Yeah, it sounds like it. That's where we're heading here in America.
Yeah, that's what I said. It looks like Obamacare, and what I see, it's a funnel construction towards everybody goes into big pharma. Yeah, and that is a death care in itself.
Yeah, it is. That's the goal, isn't it? The whole thing. I think the whole thing centers around eugenics.
It does. Yes, it absolutely does. Yeah. So yeah. Codex is worrisome, so we have to be very creative. And I am working with a doctor who works with the HCG, the human chorion gonadotrophic hormone. Yeah. To use that to lose weight, and it's a Simeon method, and it works. I know it does.
Yeah, tell me about how he's doing that.
He is doing that according to the Simeon protocol. It's a very strict protocol. You have to follow it to the letter, otherwise it doesn't work. So you really need to listen. You can't even put cream on your face that has fat in it. You can't even grab a fatty kitchen utensil, because if you are in the 3 weeks that you use the HCG, your body needs to change to fat metabolism. And if you touch fat or have fat on your face by way of a cream, then it doesn't work anymore. So it's very, very, very strict, but it's very doable. I know from personal experience.
Wow, so it's all about eliminating fat for a short period of time, huh?
Yes, and the HCG will help you to stay on a 500 calorie diet for 3 weeks, and that is why the right fat, the fat will dissolve, but it's the right fat. It's the dangerous fat around your belly, the fat that will create inflammation. That is the fat that goes with this Simeon method. And this doctor wrote a book, and it's been translated into English, and it will be published in America. We cannot publish the Dutch original version. We can only publish here in Holland, crazy as it sounds, we can only publish a translated American version. Ha!
Why is that you can't publish it in Dutch?
Because you are not allowed, by way of the European Union, to talk about a substance that does something good for you. It's a claim.
Okay, so it kind of goes back to the codex.
Yeah, you can't lay claims.
Gotcha.
But it's all started because the manufacturer of the HCG had objections that it was used off-label, not for sterility, but for weight loss. And that set the ball rolling. And now with the codex, we need to change the HCG. So it's been a blessing in disguise. The short version of the story, what I'm trying to tell, is that instead of the real HCG, we now use an energetic product, and it works even better.
Well, you mentioned off-label usage. There's a couple of really big decisions here in the United States about off-label use for drugs. And based upon the First Amendment here, which is the right to free speech, they're saying that now pharmaceutical companies can market off-label, which is basically no research has been done to prove anything that they say on off-label uses.
Yeah.
That they can now market off-label drugs for anything. They can just say, hey, look, here's a chemotherapy agent. It's also good for weight loss, so we're gonna sell it as a weight loss product, and there's nothing that can stop them.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, it is very clear that Big Pharma, that the agenda of Big Pharma is accelerating crazily. Apparently they are in a god awful hurry to get things into place to ruin our health.
And I think the reason is because they're getting scared to death because people are waking up and they're standing up against them.
Yes, yeah. And the only way, and that is why I do what I do, and I'm always very grateful when I come to a conference and somebody comes up to me and says, I read your articles, I didn't vaccinate my kids.
Right.
Because it has to be from bottom up.
Yeah, and it's happening. I'm very encouraged actually about a lot of things that are happening because people are waking up. And I agree. There's nothing more rewarding for me than to have somebody come up and see me at a conference and say, "Hey, I read your book," and instead of they told me I'd be dead in 3 months, and now it's 5 years later and I'm alive. And thank you. You know, that's what it's all about: is helping people and waking people up.
Absolutely, yes, yeah. And that is done by reinforcing people with knowledge, the knowledge that they need.
Yeah, knowledge is power, and if you're knowledgeable about how to stay healthy, then you don't have the fear factor.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's in your own hands.
Yeah,
you're not dependent on somebody else for your health, which is basically how the Western medical model is tuned. That the doctor knows it all, and you know nothing, and you have to listen and do what he says.
Yep, that's right.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so. Do you?
No.
Hey, just because you got somebody that wears a lab coat and prances around with a stethoscope doesn't mean you got to listen to him.
No, I've seen too many mistakes. But you know, I did a tantric sort of sound healing, meaning singing bija mantras into the chakras of the body, and that generates a lot of heat. And you can do that one-on-one, you can do that with the whole group, and it's very interesting. And then people get warm. And that's why I know the worst doctors are the doctors who give you a cold, clammy hand.
Yeah.
Those are the ones who are in their minds only. Their hearts are not there. So you get a doctor with a cold, clammy hand, run.
Yeah, exactly. Go find one that's not that's actually warm-hearted. It's interesting about the doctors. The iatrogenic causes of death here in the United States. There was a study. I think it was put into a book by Gary Null called Death by Modern Medicine.
Yeah.
And his last calculation was that each year in the United States, the number one cause of death is medical mistakes related to to doctors. Iatrogenic meaning induced by medicine.
Induced by doctors, yes. Iatros is doctor, yeah.
So your highest risk of dying in the United States is not from cancer or heart disease; it's from a doctor.
Yeah, well, in Israel there was doctors refused to work for 3 months. And the undertaking companies started to complain that they didn't have any customers.
Yeah, no, you're right. It was, back in the 1970s?
Yeah.
Right? 1973 or something?
Twice,
the death rate, because of the fact that the doctors were on strike, the death rate was the lowest that it had ever been.
Yeah. So that's a dead giveaway, no pun intended.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think if I remember right, the number of funerals dropped by almost 50% during that strike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's amazing. It really is amazing. Diet. We can do things with diet.
Sure.
But yeah, what I tell people in my talks is when you do your shopping, bring with you in your mind, bring your great-great-grandmother.
Yeah, good idea.
And everything that she does not understand, you leave on the shelves. So basically you walk out of the store with things that are recognizable in their original state, like potatoes and veggies and...
Fresh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing in boxes and jars and this, that, and the other. And that is... I allow people to look on boxes and jars to have an idea for a recipe to make fresh, from fresh ingredients themselves.
Yeah, that's a good rule of thumb.
Yeah, they can get inspired by what the companies are doing and then make it themselves from fresh, start from scratch.
Yeah. And I agree with that for a couple of reasons. Number one, what we talked about earlier with the GMOs, so anything that's processed is going to have genetically modified ingredients in it. And just about over 90% of the foods on the shelves in the USA that are processed have genetically modified ingredients. So you got GMOs, and you also have the pesticides and the fungicides and insecticides that are used on conventional produce. So if you can get organic produce and then you can make your own, that's the best way to go, because then you're going to avoid GMOs and you're going to avoid the pesticides.
And your taste buds will love it.
Yeah.
There is a Belgian cook. He is called Fol, F-O-L. I always forget his first name. But anyway, he makes legumaises. Legume is the French word for vegetables. And what he does, he steams vegetables and then purees them. And that is the mayonnaise, but then made from veggies. Wow,
I'd like to have that recipe.
And I can, I don't know whether he does anything in English, but I can give you his stuff. And he also has steamed vegetables cut very small in 3 millimeter cubics. Macédoine, it's called Macédoine cut veggies, steamed. And you put the legumes on that, and you have a beautiful snack.
Wow,
and
sounds good.
He did research with that. He introduced these legumes to families with children, and when they were eating, the parents would eat the legumes, and the children would start eating the mayonnaise. But they would get curious and taste the legumes, and after 3 weeks, the children didn't eat any more mayonnaise, but they only ate the legumes, because the taste buds have an intelligence.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I'm looking. I found his name is Frank von Fol.
Oh, Frank. Yeah, Frank Fol.
Frank Fol. Yeah. So I found a website out here that I've got the recipe here.
Yeah, and he has such fun things, and he cooks with children so that they learn hands-on. They have contact with their food. He teaches them hands-on to make these things. And I also know of another guy who has a company that grows sprouts. And he has a huge kitchen, and he lets kids in that kitchen. He lets them loose in his kitchen. And then they create crazy combinations like strawberries with, I don't know what, something funny. And then it actually tastes beautifully. But he lets them experiment. And it's so wonderful that these kids get an enthusiasm for food and for preparing food. And that is what you need to have. Because especially in America, but here so also is the trend that people pick up in the supermarket these prepaid of the pre-prepared meals that they can put in the microwave.
Yeah, then they nuke it.
Yeah, they nuke it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. The fresh is the best, and that sounds like very interesting stuff. I'm going to read about this recipe here. I'm glad that you turned me on to that.
He is amazing, this Frank Voll. I met him once. He is really fun.
Yeah?
Yeah, he is really fun. And he made a huge business out of it, and I think that's very sensible and very, very good of him to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that food will create a body that is happy and healthy. Because depression is also linked with depletion of nutrients and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're right. The food nutrition, good nutrition is the key. And so, if let me ask you a question. Where are all the healthy people that are on prescription drugs? The answer is that there aren't any, right? Because, I mean, if prescription drugs were good for us, then there should be millions of Americans that are on prescription drugs, that are walking around sharp, physically fit, bursting with energy, emotionally healthy, and so on. But there aren't anybody. Everybody that you ever meet that's on prescription drugs is mentally fuzzy, sickly in appearance, chronically fatigued, emotionally unstable, and so on, depressed.
Yep.
So it's all about being healthy through nutrition and food, not through taking more drugs, because there's no happy, healthy people on drugs.
No, not ever. No. And that's I haven't had an aspirin in my home for the last 30 years.
Wow.
I absolutely refuse to take anything. If I ever have a headache, I start drinking water. Special water, meaning vital and pure water. Filtered water, in other words, and I have a gadget on my water inlet in the house that brings energy into the water and the natural vortex of water, so that revitalizes the dead stuff that comes into my house.
Yeah.
Gives it the energy that it needs, gives it the movement that it needs, and it's amazing. You can.
Yeah, we have a little a machine called a vitalizer that we use as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's key, because water needs to be as pure and as vital as you can get it.
Yeah.
And most
I agree.
Headaches.
Water is a key.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I talk about that in the cancer book on Dr. Batman. Who said you're not sick, you're just thirsty, your body's dehydrated, you need water.
Yeah, Dr. Batman Galage, you mean. Yeah. The Indian guy, the Iranian guy who was in prison and had only water and a bit of salt to help people. And he found out that if you have pain, start drinking water and it will clear up. Because it's toxicity most of the cases. Yeah,
toxicity, and water will flush it out.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love the work of Masaru Emoto. I have a presentation on water, and oh man, what you can tell about that stuff, it's amazing. It's really amazing. And we are 70-80% water, so in the film What the Bleep Do We Know, there is this scene on the platform of a train station where a woman is presenting Masaru Emoto's stuff, and then there is this guy who says to the deaf photographer, the lady who is the leading lady in the film, he says something like, "Oh, if this can be done to water in the world, how is it with the water within us? So every time you have a bad thought about yourself, or you're grumpy or whatever, you change the quality of your water, of the water in your cells.
Very interesting.
You can turn that around. So if you train yourself, any time that you have a negative thought, you stop, you change the thought around, speak it out loud in the positive way, breathe it in, and go on. You get help.
Or what you could do is, actually, in the United States, having negative thoughts is now a new disease, and I think that the pharmaceutical companies have a drug to treat that.
Yeah, right. Of course. Well, then we go to the DSM-5.
Yeah.
Everything that we do is in there. Everything that we do is an illness or a syndrome or whatever.
Yeah, I think it's called negative thought syndrome.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I can't remember, but I know a guy in Belgium. He is a pharmacist, and he fumigates again. No, he fulmigates. How you say that? He is on his soapbox about
foments.
About SSRIs and Ritalin and that sort of stuff. He also has an English website, I think. So I will give the link to you. But
Good.
He thought of a term according to SIDS or whatever, but then it was a bad thoughts syndrome or a bad pharmaceutical syndrome or whatever, something like that. He made up a good thing. But sorry, I can't reproduce it. That's a pity. But he is going on about Prozac and about Ritalin, saying that it is an amphetamine product. It's cocaine in principle. So it is inducing psychotic states into children.
Yeah, it is.
And it's amazing how children's brains are being attacked by vaccines and by these drugs in the time of their development, that their brains are developing the most. I mean, a woman who is pregnant and who takes a flu vaccine, well, most probably she will lose the child. But if she doesn't, I'm not sure what this child has in terms of information in his body. He definitely comes into life not very on a positive tone.
Yeah, I agree.
And then he gets vaccinated, so in the period of his life, 2 months old, they start already. And in America, they start within 24 hours after birth with hepatitis B. So babies never even get a chance, and they already have this stuff. And I can tell you that the Engerix B, which is the hepatitis B vaccine from GlaxoSmithKline, is the worst of the worst that you can put into a child, because there is aluminum in it and thimerosal.
Yep.
So
I know, it's horrible, and it's only you're only at risk if you're sexually active. I haven't seen an infant that was sexually active.
No, neither have I. No. So it's interesting how the brains of our children are being ruined from before day one in their life.
Yeah, I agree.
Amazing.
I agree. It's terrible. When my youngest daughter was born in Panama, we almost couldn't get her out of the country to come back to the States because they force vaccinate every child in Panama with hepatitis B, and we wouldn't do it. And it was a standoff, and we basically, over a course of about 2 days, finally said, look, we're not giving her the vaccine. And they wouldn't give us a birth certificate. It was all we were asking was to give us a birth certificate so we could get her passport to come back to the United States. And they wouldn't give us a birth certificate. Finally they did. But it took about 2 days of arguing with them.
Yeah. Well, I almost advise people who are having babies now, don't get a birth certificate.
Yeah, well, that's easier said than done if you're in another country, though. That's the problem. We couldn't get back to the States.
Of course, yes. I didn't mean it as criticism on what you said, but
no, I know, I agree. But I agree with you, though. If you're in your country, if you're in your own country, I agree with your analysis, though. Don't get the birth certificate.
Yeah, because you don't want your kid go to school, do homeschooling.
Yeah, we homeschool.
The most dangerous place in terms of vaccinations is the school, because
it is.
They now tell girls to take the HPV vaccine in school, even when their parents are against it.
Yep. And now they in the USA they even want the little boys to take HPV vaccine.
Yeah, of course. You have half the population that you can't vaccinate. Come on.
Yeah. You got to get them all.
we want to have them all. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we have done our 2 hours of talking already, Ty, and it was a breeze. It was easy. It was fun.
Yeah. No, this is fun, Desiree. I really had a good time. I appreciate you having me on today.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you being on today, and I look forward to another time, sometime.
Yeah, I'd love to do it again.
Yeah, because there's so much to tell.
Yeah, sure.
So, in closing, is there something that you absolutely want to tell the Dutch and global audience before we say goodbye?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's my message is always simple and clear. It's that cancer does not have to be a death sentence. There's always hope, and it's just a matter of empowering yourself with knowledge, learning about how to treat cancer naturally, how to be healthy naturally through good nutrition and food, and staying away from the doctors that won't listen to you. So if you have a doctor that won't listen to you when you want to talk about nutrition and natural remedies, then find another doctor. Fire your doctor and find somebody else that will work with you, because there are good doctors out there that'll work with you. And that's basically my message everywhere I go, is to empower yourself with knowledge.
Yeah, I agree totally. Okay. Well, Ty, thank you so very much for your time and your enthusiasm and your input and your books.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll talk again.
Yeah, thank you, Desiree. I appreciate it. God bless you. Have a great day. We'll talk soon.
Okay. Bye-bye. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
There's a reason for my teaching, even though I can't explain. More than a dream that you are reaching, more than a laugh that shadows all the pain. A special meaning in the thorn of dreams, in the garden where thought can blind me. 'Cause I am lost here, where it never gleams, where I found that I screamed so blindly. Yeah. Until I rise up, fall down. Is this the reason that I can't feel the ground? Am I waiting for my tomorrow, or should I say goodbye? Yeah. Well, am I walking with a purpose? 'Cause I feel the same. And as I wait for my dreams to surface, as I wait I'm drowning in the rain. Just when I thought that it was over, I lost my grip and I hit the wall. A simple dream that I tripped over. Now I have to wake up to my fall, until I rise up, fall down. Is this the reason that I can't feel the ground? Am I waiting for my tomorrow, or should I say goodbye?
naar Gezond Radio.